morning. Thank you for connecting with us this morning.
Recording in progress.
And today we will be having our fifth knowledge management program on strategies and instruments for green financing in LAC. It has been lovely to be with you in these 5 sessions. And today we have a topic which is quite interesting. It's about capital that transforms instruments to promote private investments. We're going to be having some discussions and we're going to have a space for Q&A. Remember that you can text us through the chat box in YouTube and through Zoom as well.
One second, please.
Thank you, muchas gracias. Recuerden, mientras que ya van trabajando con el tema técnico de las diapositivas, que
while we are solving our technical problems, remember that we're going to have simultaneous translation, English and Spanish. You're going to be able to activate it with the globe icon in Zoom. And for the people connected through Zoom, you're going to be able to hear the translation as well. Please confirm if the information has been shared on the screen in order to continue with the instructions. Perfect. Okay, so there you go. We have simultaneous interpretation. This is quite easy to access. You need to click the globe icon where it says interpretation, and then you need to select the language of your preference. Please be mindful that we have some general guidelines. This webinar will be held in Spanish. However, you will have the subtitles in English. This webinar will be recorded. That means that you're going to be able to hear this recording every time that you enter LEDS LAC platform. Also, remember to leave your questions and comments through the chat box. If you want to have the specific questions answered, we have a Zoom Q&A box here. Okay, so to go through the agenda today, we're gonna start with welcoming words from Montserrat Chitlol from PNUD. She has been with us on several sessions. We're gonna have an introduction to the topic. We're gonna have a scenario on key topics that we're gonna discuss today. We're gonna share the presentation of experiences of Eco Invest. We have Mario from Brazil. He's joining us. We're going to have a Q&A session as well. Please remember to leave your comments, as I have mentioned, and we're going to have a final space for the Business for Nature presentation. We're going to have Camila. She's going to be sharing the tools with regards to the private sector priorities for COP30. We're going to have a conclusion, key ideas, next steps, and if you have any final questions, you're going to be able to open up the floor for some responses. Before continuing, I would like to introduce myself. As I have mentioned, I am pleased to be here. I am Gracia Gutierrez. I am a Knowledge Management Program Coordinator, and we're going to have our session for instruments for private finance. Just for you to be in context, we are in a 5th session. We have a final session for January, and we will be closing our bi-yearly or biannual program. It has been 2 years of work. And in this moment, I'm going to introduce Montserrat so we can have some opening remarks.
Montserrat, creo que está
Oye,
con... Ahí
Your
está.
mic is off.
muchísimas
Perfecto.
Oh,
gracias
yes,
a los
sorry.
organizadores. Buenos días a todos y a todas. Es
Thank
un gusto darles la
you,
bienvenida
organizers.
en este
I am
espacio de
pleased to
intercambio
welcome
regional
everybody
que
for
estamos
this
generando en el
space
marco de la
of
Iniciativa
regional
Regional de
exchange
Innovación para la
that
Finanza
we
y
are
Verde Social,
sharing
conocido también
with
comúnmente
regards
como
to green
GIF4LAC.
initiatives in LEDS
Esto lo
LACs.
estamos
This
haciendo
is
con el
known
valioso
as
apoyo de la
GIF4LAC.
Embajada de Suecia
We
a
have
través
the
de la
support from the
Estrategia de
Swedish
Cooperación para el
Embassy
Desarrollo Internacional.
for
Hoy,
international
como bien comentó Grecia,
cooperation
nos
and
convoca un tema
development.
clave
As
para
Grecia
avanzar
has
hacia el desarrollo
mentioned,
sostenible.
we
¿Cómo
want to continue
generamos
towards
instrumentos
a
de política
sustainable
pública que permiten movilizar
development. How
inversión
are we going to
privada
move
hacia la
forward
acción climática y de
and
protección de naturaleza?
move
Si bien
around some
tradicionalmente el
investment
sector
towards
público en la
nature
región ha
protection?
liderado el financiamiento para
We
el
have
desarrollo y
been
supervisión
leading
de inversiones
financing
en
on
agricultura y
development,
medio ambiente,
particularly
en América
investment
Latina y el Caribe,
on
el financiamiento para el
environmental
desarrollo no puede
topics
depender
in
únicamente
Let's
de recursos
Lack. We
públicos, porque
cannot
la
rely
magnitud de
only
los
on
desafíos
public
que enfrentamos,
resources
desde la crisis
because
climática
the
hasta las
magnitude of
brechas
challenges
estructurales en
from climate
infraestructura,
crisis
salud y
to
educación, nos
gaps in
exige que sumemos a
infrastructure,
todos los
health,
actores,
education
incluyendo el sector
demands
privado.
the action of all
Como todos
entities,
saben, la
including
movilización de inversión
private sectors.
privada no es solo una
As
cuestión
you
de
know,
voluntad y a veces lo vemos como algo
this
complicado
is
en
not
ocasiones
only
o
involving
desconectado
a
de
desire
nuestras
of
capacidades
participate.
tradicionales de financiamiento.
Sometimes we
Pero hoy el
are
sector
not connected with
público
our
tiene un papel
financing
muy importante,
capabilities,
ya que este
but
tipo de
the
inversión
public
requiere
sector
marcos de
has a main
razonamiento,
role. We
instrumentos
require
adecuados y
enabling
capacidades
frameworks,
institucionales que nos
instruments, and
permiten traducir
institutional
las
capabilities that
oportunidades
would help us
en
to
acciones e
translate
inversiones
opportunities
concretas.
into
Por
concrete
eso,
actions.
hablar de inversión privada en
In this
sostenibilidad
sense,
también
talking
tiene que ver
about
con hablar de
private
la política pública.
finance and
Por
sustainability,
ejemplo,
it
¿cómo diseñamos
involves public
incentivos que
policies.
alineen los
How are we going to
intereses del sector
design
privado con
incentives
los
that would
objetivos
align
generales de desarrollo
the
sostenible?
private
¿Cómo
sector
construimos
objectives with the
confianza,
ones
reducimos
of
riesgos y
sustainable
logramos que los
development?
planes
How do
sean de
we
capital
build
privado
trust
fluyan
and
y además lo
generate
podemos dirigir
conditions
hacia
for
donde
the
más se
private
necesita sin bajar el
capital
área por
to
lo pronto?
flow without
Es
leaving
por esto
anybody
que desde
behind?
PNUD y en
That's
alianza con la
why from
Plataforma
Peanut,
Nacional
in
LEDS LAC,
alliance with
hemos
LEDS
impulsado
LAC
el programa de
Platform,
gestión de
we
conocimiento para
have
identificar los
encouraged
instrumentos
this
para el
program on
desarrollo
knowledge
regional.
management
Este siendo un
in the
espacio
region.
para identificar,
Since this is a
sistematizar y escalar
space,
soluciones que
we're
ya
going to
están
be
generando
climbing
resultados
some
en nuestros
solutions that
países.
are already providing some
Hoy
results in our
vamos a conocer
countries.
una de estas grandes
We are going
soluciones, Eco
to
Invest in Brasil.
know
Este
about
caso de
Eco
estudio
Invest
muestra
in
que la
Brazil.
innovación en
This
política pública puede
case
ser
of
una
study
herramienta poderosa
shows
para
that
unir intereses
investment in
públicos y
public
privados
policies can
en temas de
align the
financieros como los
objectives
de
of the
desarrollo
private and public
sostenible.
sector when it comes
La
to
conversación
sustainable
de hoy se
development.
conecta con una
Our
iniciativa
talk
mucho más
today
amplia del PNUD para
relates
generar un desarrollo
to
humano
the greater
resiliente,
initiative
entendiendo que
from
las
Peanut,
inversiones deben considerar
considering that
activos como
investments
la
should
capital natural como
consider
elementos
assets
esenciales para el bienestar y el
as
desarrollo económico de la
capital
región. La
market
verdad es que en
for the
América Latina las
development
presiones como el cambio
in the
climático y
region.
la pérdida de
In Latin
biodiversidad
America,
generan
we have
amenazas muy
climate
reales para el
exchange,
crecimiento de la
and
región y
this
el desarrollo
generates a
humano.
menace
Dependemos
for
de esta
our
capital
own
natural para poder
development.
crecer y
We
es una
depend
base
on our
fundamental
natural
para nuestro desarrollo
capital to
mismo.
be able to grow, and this
Y es
is a
por ello que
base
movilizar inversión a
for
escala y
our
este
own
enfoque de
development.
sostenibilidad y resiliencia ante estas
From
presiones
this
muy reales
approach,
que estamos
since
viviendo
we
requiere
are
una agilidad
having
para el
all
desarrollo
of these
mismo.
scenarios,
Y es
we
con
should
este
consider that
objetivo hemos
we should
creado
have it as a
este de
priority.
facilidad de
That's why from
financiamiento para el
Peanut,
desarrollo humano
we have
resiliente en América
created
Latina y el
uh,
Caribe.
initiatives
Esto queriéndose
for
una forma de
financing
workshop
from
que
Latin
buscará
America and
apoyar a
the
los países
Caribbean.
en el diseño de
We
portafolios de
want to
inversión
support
que
countries when
respondan a
it comes to
prioridades
developing
nacionales, con el
portfolio
enfoque de
investments
fortalecer las
in
capacidades de
order
los
to
gobiernos nacionales
strengthen
y
the
subnacionales
capabilities
para el
of
diseño y el
regional and
cumplimiento de estrategias de
subnational
inversión resilientes,
governments
buscar cómo
when
apoyar
it
desbloquear
comes
inversiones
to
estratégicas, buscando conectar sectores y
improve
promoviendo instrumentos
strategic
financieros que son totalmente novedosos y
actions
que permiten generar
and
los incentivos positivos.
enabling
Y
incentives.
finalmente, aprovechar espacios como estos que permiten fomentar la
And
experiencia
finally,
regional
take
a
advantage
través de
of
redes de
spaces such
cooperación
like
sur-sur
this
y triangular que permitan compartir
through
aprendizajes y
networks like
soluciones
Sud,
entre
Sur,
los
and
países. Hay
triangular
riqueza de conocimiento en
networks.
la región que
So
vale la
we
pena
have
contabilizar
richness in
realmente
our
y
region, and
conocimientos
this
relevantes
enables
hacia
us
adelante y
to
generar
start
soluciones
moving forward and
específicamente
generate specific
latinoamericanas.
solutions that could
Y con
support Latin
con esa
America.
idea, GIF4LAC
With that
termina de ser una
idea,
primer punta de lanza con
we
una comunidad
can
regional, siendo
become
este puente clave para el
a
esfuerzo, conectando
link
actores, visibilizar
to
experiencias
connect
y facilitar el diálogo
actors,
entre
are
gobiernos
key roles,
descentralizados y
and enabling
socioorganizados.
dialogue between the
A 2 años de
private
la implementación,
and
este proyecto ha capacitado ya a más de
public
70
sector.
participantes
We
en
have
30
trained
países,
more than
fortaleciendo
70 members, and we have enabled capabilities of 22 public officers, and this represents a potential of financing of more than
Muchas gracias por todos y que tengan una excelente sesión aprovechando
$1,750
esta
million.
oportunidad que tenemos a compartir.
And I want to take advantage of this time
Muchas
to
gracias,
invite you
Montserrat,
to
y
share this
también me
space
llevo
with us.
palabras
Thank
de
you.
importancia que es
Yes, I
estos
would like to
espacios para
mention
poder
that
conversar
these
acerca de las
spaces
experiencias
help us to
que
talk
se dan en
about
la región y también
experiences
las
in the
oportunidades que
region
se
and
presentan para
opportunities
poder replicarlas
that
en
we're
distintos
gonna
países.
replicate
Y
in other countries as well.
pasando a después de esta importante
Now,
introducción y
after
bastante
this
interesante de Montserrat,
relevant introduction,
también tengo el
which has been
gusto
quite
de darle la
interesting,
bienvenida
I
a
would
Diego
like
Pereira.
to
Él es
welcome
consultor de
Diego
relaciones
Pereira.
exteriores
He is
también
a
de Peru and
consultant in
LAC
sustainable
y luego
finance
nos va a acompañar en este
in
espacio para poder conocer estos
UNDP-LAC,
conceptos
and
claves,
he is
tener un
going to
panorama
be
también
introducing
más
key
rico
topics.
acerca
We're
de los
gonna
temas
have
que
a
vamos a
rich
conversar el día de hoy.
panorama or
Entonces, Diego,
scenario on the
te
topic that
cedo
we're gonna
te cedo
discuss
el
today.
micrófono.
So, Diego, you may go ahead.
Bueno, muchas gracias, Grecia, y
Thank you,
bienvenidos a
Grecia,
todos
and
a este webinar
welcome, everybody.
desde la tibia Montevideo, donde estoy en
I
este
am in
momento,
Montevideo, in warm
una primavera
Montevideo.
muy linda
We're
que estamos
having
comenzando.
a
Voy
beautiful
a compartir
spring
una
at the moment. I'm
presentación.
going to
Ahí
share
está.
my presentation
Es
now.
un breve contexto, de hecho.
This is just
Vamos
a
a poner un
brief
poco el tema
background.
en la
This is
mesa
just to set the topic,
para después tener
and
insumos
the
que nos puedan
idea
nutrir
is to
mucho más
have,
de lo que
so to
Mario
speak,
nos
the raw
acaba de explicar un
material
poco en Brasil.
before
Pero para
Mario's
poner un poco de
experience in
contexto,
Brazil. But just
quiero
to give you
decir
some
que una
context, I would
pequeñísima
like
configuración y rápida
to
configuración del lugar donde he
discuss
estado
a
en
configuration
América Latina
of
y el Caribe
the
durante
Latin America
aproximadamente
and the
20 tiempo, y
Caribbean
para
in
eso
our
me voy a basar
region.
fundamentalmente en dos
And
documentos
I
que
am
los
going
invito
to be
también
talking about two
a leer.
documents. I
Uno
kindly
tiene que
invite you
ver
to read
con el
such
Informe Regional
documents. One is
de
related to
Desarrollo
the
Humano,
regional report of
recientemente
human
salido,
development.
y el
This is something
segundo
that is just
con un
published.
documento de
And
CEPAL
we have
que
the
trata
second
sobre
diagram
el panorama del desarrollo en
related
América Latina
to
y
a
sobre todas las
CEPAL
ventajas de
document
esto.
related
Ambos
to
documentos
Latin American development
tienen
and
obviamente
all of the
conexión
traps
entre ellos.
related to
El que
its
aborda
own
el
growth.
desarrollo humano en la
And
región
of
tiene
course,
mucho
it's
más
related
énfasis
to
o hace
human
mucho más énfasis
evolution,
especial
is
sobre la capacidad de
emphasizing
resiliencia que
on
parte de
the
la región
resilience
deben tener
capacity that all the
ante
countries in the region
nuevas
should
amenazas,
have
además de las
in the face of
estructurales,
menaces,
para poder
in
afrontar
addition
el
to the
gran desafío de
structural ones that we
desarrollo.
have,
Por
in
otra
order
parte,
to
el texto de CEPAL
further develop as a
básicamente
country.
interrelaciona
And
tres dimensiones
the
o
other
tres desafíos
document
trampas, como le
relates
dicen en el
three
desarrollo,
challenges,
que tienen que ver
three
con la capacidad
sort
de
of
crecer, con la
traps, you would
desigualdad
say,
y con
on
la
development:
capacidad de desarrollos
the
institucionalizados.
capability to growth and
Entonces, yo creo
institutional
que,
development,
y
as
esto
well as
para quienes
inequality.
quieran entrar un poco más en estos temas, les
So,
recomiendo mucho
for
estos
all the people
documentos, y
that would
sobre
like
estos,
to know
por
about
ahí un
this,
poquito
I strongly
gráficos, un
recommend
poco para
such
hacer esto,
documents.
justamente
In order
los
to
gráficos nos
enlighten
permiten
in
tener
this
una
more, we have
representación
some
visual
graphs. These help us to
de
have
este
a visual
contexto
representation
latinoamericano
of the
y
Latin
ahondar
American
luego en la
context.
importancia
And then
fundamental
this
y
is going
estratégica,
to
digamos, del financiamiento para el
decant
desarrollo de nuestra
into
región, ¿no? ¿El desarrollo de qué? El
strategies
desarrollo
for the
para
development of
qué.
our region. But
Empecemos por entender que el principal
why are we
problema de
doing this
América
for?
Latina
Well, we should understand that the
en
main
este 2025 y hacia
problem of
adelante
Latin
es
America
la
in
capacidad del gobierno
2025 is
a
our
tener sendas de
capability
crecimiento a una
of
dinámica mayor,
having
esto es, a unas tasas de crecimiento mayor.
uh,
Algo que habíamos
growth
visto
rates
en el
that could
pasado
be
muy
higher.
relacionado a los
This is
altos
something that we have
ciclos de
seen
precios de
in the
commodities,
past, for
digamos. Entonces ahora el
example,
desafío es,
related to
bueno,
the commodity
cómo en
price.
realidad América
But now the
Latina,
challenges would
países de América
be
Latina, podemos crecer
how are,
a una
as
dinámica
we, as countries of
importante,
Latin America,
mayor,
can
¿no?
actually
Quizás en torno
grow
al 3, 4,
greatly,
pero
around 3 or
cerca, no tanto
4%.
sostenido
So
sobre el
this will not
crecimiento de
be
precios
sustained
que se está
only
reportando
on
en la economía. Aquí
the
tenemos dos desafíos más
this
importantes, ¿no? Uno tiene que ver
rise of
evidentemente
pricing
con la capacidad general de
to our
innovación, ¿no?
economies. One is
Es
related to
necesario innovar, es necesario
innovation.
innovar
We
en
need to
diversificación
innovate
productiva también para volver a tener
and
crecimiento
having more
dinámica, y para
production
eso
in order
necesitamos
to
crecer.
have
Los gráficos
rates of
de la derecha
dynamic
nos muestran un
growth,
poco esa
and
baja
the
productividad en
graphs to
todo
the
trimestre,
right
baja
show that we have
productividad
low
del total de los países de
productivity
América Latina,
out
y
of
por
the
otra parte
totals of
también
Latin America.
las bajas tasas de
And
inversión
we
institucional por
have
parte de los
a low
inversionistas
rates of investments when it
internacionales. Es
comes
decir,
to
América Latina
the
enfrenta hoy
GDP. And Latin
problemas
America
importantes de generar
is
dinámica de
constantly
crecimiento. Uno.
facing
Dos.
problems of
Segundo
generating
problema
growth dynamic. The
importantísimo
second
en América
problem,
Latina
and
es
it's quite relevant by
en
the
este
way,
mundo
would
post-COVID
be that in this
las
post-COVID
importantes
world or
deudas
post-pandemic
y
world, there's lots
déficits
of debt
fiscales que
and
enfrentan los países
there's
americanos.
fiscal
Niveles de deuda,
deficit
una
or,
muestra
or
gráfica de la
taxing
derecha para
deficit as
América
could
Latina y los países del
be
Caribe. Países del Caribe
shown.
superiores al
And
75%
this
¿no? de la
is over 70 5% in the Caribbean and Latin America. In Latin America, it's only 50% of the gross domestic product. And we have some problems in identifying expenses, I think. And this generates a problem that actually all countries are facing. If we are not improving our deficits, we're going to continue increasing our debt. So there's like this whole of this vicious cycle. This is the child of COVID, you would say, because we have used lots of budget to take care of the pandemic. So that's why we have these great challenges, and we have lots of restrictions when it comes to accessing the market to finance our own development challenges. Well, the third element would be the climate change. I think that in the whole world, nobody can escape from this problem. In the growth, in the graphic to the right, you could see how over the last years, we are increasing on the risks related to climate change. I'm sure that you're going to be able to discuss more under these graphs. And I'm sure that Mario is going to be able to talk about his experience as well for us to understand how serious these climate change effects have and its all impliances. For example, on the graphs to the left, we have impacts on production for each countries. This is showing us the different scenarios according to the temperature getting higher. This is related to production of soy, wheat in the continent. And also, we also have all the losses or the effects that could come from climate change. So to sum up, we have climate events or climate scenarios that could improve losses or could hinder the production of crops in this case, right? I think that the graph to the right speaks on its own and is going to be discussing the average temperatures of Latin America and the Caribbean. There's like a whole timeline there from 1961 up to 2024. And this is something that we're going to be able to see in the region. The last component that I want to discuss about would be the inequality in opportunities. I think that Latin America is more is one of the most unequal countries or continent. And I think that we were able to reduce poverty in a sense in Latin America. However, we still see and we are having an increase of vulnerable population. I mean, they are not poor as such, but they are barely hanging in there. So we have groups of population in a large state of vulnerability, people that probably are going to be soon in a situation of poverty. Of course, as you can see in the graph, this is a representation that we are the second continent in the world that is subject to poverty. And we know that Latin Americans, as such, we understand that we don't have larger economic opportunities as other continents. So we have lots of inequality, as you can see, and this is translated in vulnerable population. Furthermore, I need to say that there's a lack of capabilities in our systems to generate opportunities for our own population, as well as their well-being. Latin America, in this way, we are in a route of complying with 22% of the analyzed goals up to 2030. Of course, this is quite heterogeneous, I would say, according to the countries and according to their own needs. Maybe we are one of the best, I will have to say, but we are really far away from our objectives. And we have a financing gap as well. That means how can we actually comply with our agenda up to 2030? All countries in Latin America. And we have done an estimation to see how much money we would need to finance such agenda. And we're estimating among $650,000 million and 1,340 billion American dollars. And I think that this represents between 5 and 11% of the GDP. And we have, as you can see, a financing gap in order to provide such solutions. Evidently, when we are discussing 5, 12%, just talking about 5%, we should be able to know that governments as such, public policies as such, could not finance such transition towards complying with the 2030 agenda, right? Because we cannot increase taxes on our people to be able to face this. It cannot be exclusively a public sector agenda because it would be impossible to reach this goal. And there's lots of indefinite problems. We should mention that there's a reduction of international cooperation now. So that's why the financial scenario, at least the public sector, basically it's impossible for us to comply with this agenda. And the narrative is that we require the private sector. We need to draw on this private sector to finance our objectives. And we need to, we're going to be discussing how can we actually attract this financing. We have two elements related to how are we actually attracting sustainable financing. Well, first of all, Latin America represents 6% of the bond market of sustainable financing worldwide. Of course, if we compare with the involvement of Latin America, 6% is low. So we will have to say that basically we could withdraw or we could attract more sustainable financing. But the greater proportion of sustainable finance goes to Europe, the US, and then it goes towards the Pacific. This is a region that actually has increased their capabilities of attracting private investment. And the second element is related to indebtedness and the emission of public and private indebtedness. 21% is represented by the social sustainable bonds. This implies a large number, by the way, because Europe only has 4.5 related to green bonds. Latin America maybe has more, so we could say that there is a clear leadership of the larger countries in Latin America, such as Brazil and Mexico. Of course, because they have a larger economy than ours. Of course, after Mexico, we have Colombia, we have Chile when it comes to sustainable bonds. And this is my last two slides, I promise. And we are gonna be talking to Mario afterwards. I'm gonna talk about private financing, right, for the objectives. And we have been talking on last June about this, but private financing basically refers the financing related to closing the gap to comply with the agenda towards 2030. So we need to withdraw private financing in this case, and it implies financing towards the opportunities that each country defines. So this is related to the development plans of each countries, the NDCs, NBSAPs as well. So
el financiamiento para el desarrollo
the
sostenible
financing for
está fuertemente
sustainable
vinculado a los objetivos
development is
y a
strongly
las
linked to
necesidades y estos
objectives,
objetivos de desarrollo
needs
de
as
cada país
well,
establecido. Estas agendas
and
son
objectives that
fundamentales
each
porque
country
son marcos materiales
establishes.
para poder
This is a
continuar.
general
Y
framework
al
to
final deben
continue
materializarse,
moving
o sea,
forward.
cómo lo
And
hacemos, cómo podemos materializar.
we need to
Y
think
acá hay
about
todo un gran
how
flujo de
are
innovación
we actually
financiera,
going to
todo esto del
materialize
palo de
this. There's a
las finanzas se
whole
están refundando, sobre todo la nueva arquitectura financiera
group
se
related to
refunda por una
financing,
innovación
and
financiera
all
que
of
se
this
da
finance
fundamentalmente con los fondos
is
de
basically
ciclo
including
combinado, los
innovation. We
llamados
have
blended finance, que se suman a
combined
las líneas de crédito
bonds or blended
pública
finance,
privada, que son instrumentos financieros
and
que
these
tienen la
are
capacidad de
instruments,
catalizar, o sea, de combinar, y en esto Mario nos va a dar mucha información, pequeñas porciones de capital público para atraer capital privado de inversión de
and
emergencia.
we're going to
¿Qué
be able to
obstáculos
withdraw
enfrenta el
private
incremento
capital
decidido de la inversión privada?
related
Por un
to
lado,
private sector. On one
tendríamos uno de
side,
los
we will have
fundamentales,
to say that the
es
fundamental
lograr un
ones
adecuado
is
balance
to
de riesgo y
find
retorno.
a proper
América
balance
Latina es
of
mirada desde
return
el
and risks.
mundo como
Latin
una
America
región de
basically
importante
is
riesgo. ¿Sí?
overlooked as a
Riesgos
region
políticos,
of
¿sí?
relevant
Por debilidades
risks. We
políticas,
have
por necesidades
political
políticas,
risks,
riesgos
of
cambiarios,
course,
por nuestras
and we
inestabilidades o
have
debilidades en materia de las
exchange,
principales variables
foreign
macroeconómicas
exchange hedging,
desvíos
and
que
all
podemos
of
tener.
this,
Es
it's
necesario
implying
encontrar
lots of problems.
mecanismos
We need to
de
find
mitigación de esos
mechanisms to
riesgos para que
mitigate
el
such
capital privado
risks
entre. El capital
for
privado
the private
advierte
capital
determinados riesgos por los cuales
to
no
fit
invierte.
in.
Si nosotros logramos
If we
mecanismos,
achieve
instrumentos que
our
puedan bajar estos
mechanisms
riesgos,
and
vamos a
instruments
poder
that could reduce
alentar
such
el ingreso
risks,
de
we're going to
capital
be able to
privado.
enable
Segundo elemento
capital.
es la
And the second
necesaria
element is
disponibilidad de
related
datos
to
y
the availability
transparencia de
of
estos fondos.
data.
Necesitamos datos de
Transparency
sostenibilidad,
report. We need
métricas de impacto
sustainable data,
estandarizadas, que cada
metrics.
país
Each
lo que se llama el
country
data
needs
collection
to have
process.
a
El
data
dato
collection
de impacto
process
es fundamental
and
porque
the impact data, which
las
will be
inversiones de
fundamental
impacto
because
vinculan un dólar
the
invertido al impacto
investment
generado. Y para
links to
esto
a
es
invested dollar
fundamental
to
tener datos, datos
the impact.
confiables, datos
We need to
que
have
se
reliable
generen flujos
data or
recurrentes, datos que puedan ser
data
confiables.
that
Entonces,
could
esta
be validated.
condición de
So
existencia de datos
such
es fundamental
conditions
para
would
poder
be
atraer
fundamental
inversiones
to
que generen
withdrawn
impacto, esto de
investments
fondos
that
de
could
inversión de
generate
impacto. El
impact on
carácter
the investment
innovador de
fund.
todas estas formas de
The
inversiones, como así de las
innovation
actividades productivas
uh,
sostenibles,
relationship
implican,
would
como toda
imply,
innovación,
as every
algún
innovation
nivel
would
de
imply,
incentivo, de
a sort of
subsidio, en
incentive
tarifas, en tasas, de
when it
cierta
comes to
protección
rates
a la
and
innovación en los
the
sectores productivos tempranos, así como en los
innovation,
vehículos financieros
such
especializados.
as
Y
vehicles.
finalmente, otro de los
And
obstáculos
finally,
sería
we're gonna have
y esto es un obstáculo importante, no
the
para las
final
economías más grandes
obstacle,
como las que
not
tienen
for the
OPEs
economies
chicas
such
como
as Brazil
Sida,
and
que es, bueno,
Mexico, but
cómo
for the
podemos
lowest one.
nosotros
How
a
can
nivel
we
de nuestras economías
actually
fomentar la generación de estos
increase
pipelines de inversión,
generating these investment
oportunidades de inversión, negocios
opportunities for
concretos de
investment,
inversión
business
sostenible, ¿no?
that could be sustainable?
Cómo hacemos
How can
posibilidades de
we
invertir en
actually generate
agroindustria,
possibilities to
¿no?
invest in the agro
Uruguay,
industries?
es decir, cómo es un país ganadero, bueno,
And
cómo,
Uruguay would
cómo, qué
be
implica
a
la
agricultural
ganadería
country.
sostenible,
What
cómo
implies
invertir
this?
en sectores como la
And
ganadería, la
investing
agricultura,
in
la
agriculture,
ganadería, el
livestock,
turismo, y así
mining,
podría decir
tourism,
que América Latina
and
tiene conjuntos muy
I could
importantes de
say
sectores de
that we
actividad que
have
pueden ser
lots of
dirigidos en
sectors
lógica de
in which
sostenibilidad.
we
Bueno,
could
¿dónde están esos
invest
pipelines de
in.
inversión?
So
¿Cuáles son
we
las
need to
soluciones
find where
necesarias?
are our
Último,
investment pipeline.
¿qué acciones necesarias? Entonces, ¿qué tenemos que hacer? ¿Cuál es nuestra agenda,
This
nuestro
is
roadmap
our
para poder
last slide.
solo
What
tener
are
un
the
nivel de inversión
required
mucho más bajo?
actions? Of
Primero,
course, we
los
have
países
more actions needed,
garantía existencia de
but these
marcos
are the three
regulatorios,
main ones.
¿sí? Marcos regulatorios
First, we need to work
taxonomía,
on the regulatory
protocolos, ya están
frameworks.
presentes en
We need
muchos
to
países en
implement
Latinoamérica
green
estos mecanismos,
protocols.
¿sí? Que favorezcan a las naciones, aseguren las reglas de
We
juego,
need
estableciendo
to
marcos
guarantee
legislativos,
that the
marcos
countries are going to
de normas
follow
deben
these regulatory
permanecer en el tiempo
frameworks,
porque es
and we
condición
need to
necesaria para
comply
permanecer.
with these rules.
Mecanismos de recolección
Second, we need to
de
establish
no lo voy a
data
repetir porque es el
collecting
anterior, pero es
mechanisms.
también un elemento fundamental para
This
las
is a
inversiones.
crucial
Y
element for
finalmente,
investments. And
a
finally,
nivel de los países,
at
Brasil
a
sí
national level,
es el único país que hoy tiene
Brazil is the
desarrollado
only
lo que se llama
country
una
that
country
has
platform, una
developed a
plataforma de
country
países
platform It's a country platform that organizes countries to bring international funds, to attract investment funds from a foreign source, so we can channel these funds towards the goals proposed by the countries. And the private sector is also investing there. And there is a very important element. In Latin America, most of the sustainable financial source comes from local agents. The large investors in Latin America are Latin Americans, maybe because we understand our main risks. But now we need to attract foreign investment. In this sense, the country platforms and the national banks are essential, and also the multilateral bank, and also the development agencies and ministries. They need to articulate, to work in partnership, to generate financial and investment instruments. This is closely related to financial instruments to reduce risks and also to catalyze investments. In the sense, I have been in the academic world, and this conceptual framework is very nice, but if we cannot really understand it or apply it, it is not going to be useful. And that's why we have here Mario Almeida. He is the head of EcoInvest, that is a project led by the Brazilian government, and he's an excellent example of what we were saying. This is a financial instrument that is able to catalyze the investment. This is a great and complete example. So Mario has the challenge to explain what is this about, and essentially so we can understand these kind of instruments. And I know, Mario, that you agree that our main goal today is that all the participants of this session, and also the ones who are going to watch this recording, to understand how to implement these instruments in their local context. And thank you very much, Mario, and the floor is yours. Thank you for being here.
Muchas gracias, Diego.
Thank you, Diego. And I want to say that your presentation was a gift for us. And it was quite interesting. I'm going to change into English because I don't want to speak Portuguese, so I'm going to speak in English.
As you showed, you started with solo un momento que voy a cambiar mi audio.
Hold on a second, please.
Entonces, sorry. Diego show us how the economic growth of our countries in Brazil and Latin America as a continent is coming down in relation to other countries around the world. I think this is the main thing that you have to put in our mind. What you can do about that? What is the opportunity that you are leading now? Of course, there is a problem. You are seeing that is a problem, but it could be opportunity as well. So taking this in mind, how to use this low growth process that you are, and how to use the climate change and use this problem to have a strategy, a development strategy to lead with that. So I think the EcoInvest and ecological transformation plan in Brazil bring it. So I am coordinator of this program in Brazil that's called EcoInvest, but it's a program that is for mobilization capital for sustainable projects in Brazil. So it's much more about how to bring new capital to finance sustainable projects. Of course, it is inside our bigger policy. That is this name, ecological transformation plan. That the meaning is very straightforward. How to use this opportunity of the climate change to bring a new development strategy for our countries. In this sense, I think it's appropriate for Brazil, but it's very applicable for each country in South America as well, because we have very similar cultures and climate issues. I mean, it's very similar, all of these characteristics of all of the countries that we are in our continent. So I think that you should start from that. What is the main problem and what will be the strategy to lead with that? So my first recommendation is that what will be the strategy? So in Brazil, we constructed that ecological transformation plan. That is how to bring new investments to lead with mitigation and adaptation problem. But more than that, how to use that to bring value added for our supply chains, how to use new minerals, how to use other commodities that we have here in South America, and use that more than just a commodity, and use in the way that you can bring value added for our supply chain. So is the first comment that I think that is a recommendation, how to start a policy to bring this new concept that we are inserted in Brazil. The second, how to use the fiscal space. You showed for us the complexity of the fiscal space that you have in South America. We have high debt in all of the countries. So it's I am from the Treasury of Brazil, so my main activity so far is to lead with fiscal space and medium-term fiscal framework. And here I think you have another opportunity as well. How to use this medium-term fiscal framework to lead with that, because if you have climate change, you have impact over the debt, we have impact over the revenues, and we have impact of the expenses as well. So somehow you should use these constraints and push one policy that can fight against or create an environmental to lead with these things, with this climate impacts, with this climate problems. So I think we need to use this framework, the PFM, public finance management, to bring this a mechanism that can push the policy. So we have a strategy where we can achieve, which space we can want to reach, and then what is the size of the fiscal space, and then set up the instrument that each country can use for lead with this problem, and use that in sense that you push the economy, not use it against the economy. And then come up with that's the place, that's the region that Eco-Invest come up. So using these fiscal instruments, using this macro constraint, we use this in how to deliver appropriate financial incentive, because you need to mobilize more than public capital. We need private capital as well, as Diego mentioned in the end of his presentation. It's important to use the market in favor of the policy, not against of the policy. So in this sense, we need to start with many instruments. So we need to construct a framework that is applicable. We need to avoid greenwash. We need to construct some instrument that is reliable for the market. That is, we have a very good portfolio of project and investment that is suitable for the market and suitable for the country as well. And in this sense, we construct this framework. So what you can finance with Eco-Invest? It's energy transition, bioeconomy, circular economy, and infra for adaptation, and green infrastructure and for adaptation. But more than these big names, what is really means? What kind of energy transition project we are in favor to finance? So for Brazil, it's very important to the renewables fuels. So we have a very large space. We have a very countryside, so you can incentivize these renewables. But I think that it's a possibility for other countries as well, like Bolivia, like other countries that have the same kind of soil, and you can have this opportunity. The critical minerals that you can use as batteries, but more than produce just critical minerals, how to use this and integrate in the supply chain, how you can bring more value added for that. So in this sense, Ecoinvest is not you finance just the mineration. It's necessary to bring new technology for that. So in this sense, this policy use the private instrument to bring the public incentives to reshape the way of the economy is leading with this. So of course, it's not possible to bring public capital just to bring mineral and export this mineral. It's important to bring new companies, new technology, to have more value added here in our countries. In terms of the bioeconomy, how many solutions you can bring for that with our forests, with our environmental, with our climate solution. So how to use that in the way that you can bring new development for our country, and then use this public money to push this in this direction. The same you can say about the infrastructure and circular economy as well. And then we have the instruments. And then I start with the Ecoinvest presentation now. That is a blended finance unit within the Treasury that use public money to push new private projects. So it started with this idea to minimize the cost of the valuation of our currency, because we have a very volatile currency in compared to the main currency of the world. It started with the idea to have some fund to buy this risk. But as a treasury person, no, it's not a good idea. Of course, you have a very big problem with this is very good idea. So better than that, let's use the public fund to minimize the cost of that. So you can say, we know the amount that you can put in our budget for that, the cost of the policy. So Ecoinvest brings this concept. Use the public funds, the very low interest rate that you can put in these assets, and then reduce the cost for specific projects, specific instruments that you push this policy. So you have this blended finance is the first line. The second line is two ways to use public funds to reduce the exchange risk. So we have one layer that is retain the risk into the project. So let's suppose that you have a project that is funded by external capital, but the revenues will be in local currency. So you can have some kind of loan that can retain the risk into the project. But the fiscal space is not enough. You need to use the market and then use some tail risk instrument to transfer the exchange risk to the market. So it's another instrument that you have. And then we have the final one, that is how to create an environment to have new project, sustainable project, and bankable project. That's, for me, it's the main issue for South America. How to have bankable projects. So many times we need to guarantees, we need to have some 80 process, because it's necessary to bring some capabilities to create this, to increase this portfolio of bankable projects. So Ecoinvest is leading with that. So it's bring blended finance that is a cheap money for a specific project. So we can lower the cost of the capital. That is a problem in our region. Then we have these two instruments to lead with exchange risk and not putting the treasure into the corner. So we know ex ante the size of the fiscal space to lead with that. And we have to think about the portfolio of the project. What will be the solution that you are creating in our region? So, and how we can use modern finance and market and public capital to push this portfolio of the project. And then we come back in our presentation, how to bring a lower growth of our region. Of course, it's with innovation, with this new solution and new industrialization. It's about that.
Beleza, Mário. Muito obrigado.
Muito bem.
Ah, muy interesante, muy interesante. Este fondo
Very
ya
interesting.
están evaluando,
In
o mejor dicho, cómo lo han mirado los inversores.
how
¿Tienen algún
what is the
feedback de
perspective
esto, los
from
inversores?
investors regarding this fund? Do you have a feedback from investors? Yes, we work with auctions. So we have the first auction.
Los bancos de nuestra que trabajan con nosotros,
The banks that work with us
vieron nessa subasta e
know about this auction,
como 1.2 bilhões de dólares.
and it was about $2 billion from investment.
To realize with this public fund will be around 8 billion. The leverage was 6.5. So the perfect example of blended finance. I think that is the bigger example of blended finance that you have so far.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's also that I mean, despite of the complexity of this financial vehicle, of this blended finance solution, I think this can be replicable in much of our economies. And I think that perhaps exchange rate volatility is one of our biggest constraint or biggest risks.
Actually, yesterday I was wondering about how to bring Ecoinvest for other countries, because we in Brazil have a quite developed financial system, so it's easier to use the financial instrument because we already have some derivative market liquidity in the short term, but not in the long term. But we have a very high liquidity in the short term, so you can use it to push that. But I think that you can reshape some instrument and the concept. The first part of my presentation is just about that. What will be the strategy? How to use the problem to have a solution? What is the kind of fiscal space that we have? And then use that in favor to create these fiscal stimulus, to put private sector with public sector, working together, not against, because many times we have this position to put against each other. We need to bring the private sector with us. And I was wondering about the coordination among our countries, Mercosul, as we are, and other platform, we need to be more integrated and use this kind of opportunity that we have, and this advantage that you have. Each country has a kind of advantage in our region. How to use this in favor of us and not against again. I think that it's a perfect way to
yeah, for sure. I think if we can hedge our exchange rate risk, I can imagine a huge investment fund from abroad investing in US dollars. for in a regional pipeline. So in the sense that
Exactly.
yeah, if
And you can have
yes.
like a fund that you can bring this external, and then have a bunch of currencies, and you can have this investment in local currency, for instance.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of many ideas and good ideas that you can deploy from that. It's
I
just an
always said
experience
that
that we have here.
we are colleagues, so I always says that finance is one of the, I don't know if it is the most, but certainly it's a very creative issue, a very creative or innovative in the sense of creative solutions, financial creative solution to solve some of our challenges and opportunities. I think I really like how you tackle this issue by addressing opportunities and challenges. That's the entry point to understand how to apply sustainability as a new business model. I think that's and also in finance. So thank you very much for your sharing. Huh? Sorry.
And you have this opportunity because this climate change could be opportunity. I think that's the point that you can use in our favor.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, at the end of the day, Latin America, it's the green triangle of the world. So it's a nice place to invest. It's a good asset
Exactly.
to be invested, and also many of the um, projects and investments in Latin America are really profitable, but at the same time they are seen as
Fiscal
they are
constraint and
really risky.
macro.
Uh-huh.
We have fiscal constraint, macro imbalances, and have to lead with that. But
Yeah.
we lose this idea to have a long-term vision of our policy. We need to somehow to bring this again, I think.
Really interesting your presentation, Mario. Thank you very much. I think that's it's very enlightening our way of thinking. We just did it in a few seconds, trying to now to create a regional fund. But yeah, I think that's our challenge. Our as entrepreneurs, yes, I mean, running companies, working in multilateral, in the government, whatever we are, is to think in a more creative way to bring solutions, to bring green solutions for old problems. Thank you very much, Maria. I really enjoy your presentation and your explanation.
Thank you
Thank
so
you very
much,
much for
Mario.
this invite. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Mario and Diego. I think we have plenty of questions as well. We're going to try to take them to the end of the space, but thank you so much. There are so many topics to talk. I think this is going to be a interesting space. Maybe we can have the opportunity to have another event to talk about this important subject. Entonces, paso a español nuevamente. Muchas
I'm going to move
gracias.
into Spanish
Y
again.
para
Thank you
poder
very
continuar con
much.
nuestra presentación,
And to
le doy la
continue with our
bienvenida a
presentation,
Camila,
I'm
que
going to
también
welcome
nos trae
Camila,
esta información y esta presentación
who
acerca de la plataforma
has
Business
this
for Nature. Nos
presentation
va
regarding
a comentar un
Business
poco
for
acerca de
Nature
los
platform.
objetivos
She's going to
generales de
tell
la
us a little
plataforma y
bit
también nos
about
va
the
a decir un
general
montón de
goals,
herramientas,
and
herramientas que nos traen
also she's going
hacia
to
la vida de
present
la
this
COP30 que
important
tenemos en la
tool
vuelta
that
de la
is
esquina.
going to bring us
Muchas gracias,
towards
Camila. ¿Cómo estás? Muchas
COP30.
gracias por
Thank
estar
you very
aquí con
much,
nosotros el día
Camila.
de
How
hoy.
are you?
Hola, buenos días a todas y a
Hello, good
todos.
morning.
Voy a compartir pantalla.
I'm
No
going
sé,
to
no
share
he
my
visto si la
screen.
pueden ver ya.
Y ya se puede ver, perfecto.
Vale, perfecto. Entonces, bueno, buenos
Thank you.
días. Estoy muy contenta por estar con
I am
todos
glad
esta mañana para
to
hablar un
be
poco de
here
algunas de las
to
peticiones
tell you
principales o
about
mensajes
some of the main
de
requests
prioridades del sector privado
or
para la COP30.
priorities from
Mi
the
nombre es
private
Camila,
sector
trabajo en Business for
towards
Nature en el
COP30.
equipo
My name
de
is Camila
Business y
Bonilla.
Atlántica Global y
I
gestionamos
work in Business for
como parte
Nature,
de
and I
nuestro
also
trabajo de implementación regional
support
en Latinoamérica.
our regional
Brevemente les
implementation
quiero
work in Latin
comentar
America.
que Business for Nature es
Briefly,
una
I want to tell
coalición
you that
global
Business
con
for
más de 100
Nature is a
organizaciones
coalition, global
empresariales y de
coalition of
conservación
more than
que propone
100
algunas empresas
partner
con visiones de
organizations.
futuro o más
They
ambiciosas.
work with
Trabajamos
some
por la
ambitious
integración de la
companies,
naturaleza y la
and we
biodiversidad en
work
distintos
to
ámbitos.
integrate
Nuestra teoría de
biodiversity and
cambio
nature in different
básicamente es que
environments.
la acción
Our
política, la
change
acción
theory
empresarial
basically is that political action and entrepreneur action can work together to contribute towards a positive economy and an economy that is going to be positive for nature. So we believe that the political action, the frameworks, the regulatory frameworks can promote or drive companies to take more ambitious actions. And that also these actions from the entrepreneur setting is going to provide more reliability so governments can implement these regulations. And COP30 this year is an opportunity, a clear opportunity to integrate the nature and climate agendas. This is going to be the first COP of climate change in the Amazonian region. Many companies are recognizing that this is a great opportunity for their operations. And the main goal of the agenda is to have a clear opportunity to promote financing. An integrated climate and nature helps companies to reduce risk and to leverage opportunities, and in general, to accelerate actions. This year, we have a specific expectation for private sector that is basically focused on action thematic lines. And the government of Brazil is expecting to have some progress shown regarding this environment. In this context, by using this coalition, we developed this document that you can see in the left. And this document is directed towards company and it highlights requirements or comments for the private sector. We are not going to review the entire document because it's a very comprehensive document that is going to be useful for many companies, but these are some of the key messages. And we did a consultation process with global companies and Latin America companies in the beginning of this year, and we asked these companies what were the key messages, and we received this information. We are going to provide the QR code at the end of this presentation to see all these messages, but I would like to highlight a couple of them. The first one, the first request was to stop deforestation and in 2030. And in this agenda, one of the solutions identified was to use the private-public instruments. And one of those is very important, is going to be important in the COP30. That is an instrument of blended finance. And you're going to see this in the document that I'm going to share after the presentation. But this is an opportunity to scale finance to have a large impact in the tropical countries around the world. And the second request that I'm going to highlight is to align and scale financing for nature, and specifically to solve nature issues. And we don't have enough finance in this topic. So we have identified to create better collaboration mechanisms between the private and the public sector. And as part of this, we need to include clear investment paths. Another topic is to work or to progress on this agenda of detrimental subsidies. Because we know that we have the money, but the money is being directed towards practices that are not good for the environment or the climate. And we need to redirect these financial resources towards nature-based solutions. And we have the call to action. If you're going to be in COP30, you can use the messages from this toolkit, from this document. You can access in this QR. I know that it is in English, but many Latin American organizations have translated it towards Spanish. And also, please share this information in your networks. And we need to identify this instrument. And if you have any question, please also you can write me to my email. I'm going to leave you the link to this document and also the email. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, familia. Creo que siempre es interesante también encontrar estos mensajes que nos dan el norte de cómo llegar a una COP con mensajes claros, con una idea clara hacia dónde queremos llegar, en especial porque hemos evidenciado en la sesión lo importante que es
I think
cerrar
that we
esta
were
brecha de
able to
financiamiento y la
evidence in the
importancia del sector
region
privado
to see
en
the
estos colaboraciones.
gaps of closing
Entonces, te quería agradecer mucho por
the
este espacio
collaboration,
y
and I want to
para ya
thank you for
darle
this
el cierre a
space. And
nuestro
just to
evento del día de hoy,
close
le quería agradecer
our event
a nuestros
today, I would
expositores y
like
darle la
to
bienvenida a Rocío para
thank
que
our
en unos
speakers
4
and
minutos
welcome
nos pueda dar
Rocio.
el
So
cierre con
just in
nuestra
4
idea.
minutes, she could close this session.
Muchas gracias a todos y muchas
Thank
gracias
you,
también a los
everyone,
participantes
and I
que
would
están
like to
quedando,
thank
sabiendo
the
que ya nos pasamos unos
participants. I
minutos.
know that we have gone
Creo que es
over time,
importante lo que
and
se ha dicho
I
acá.
think that
Es claro lo que ha
what
dicho
we're seeing
Diego
here
en
is
términos de
relevant.
financiamiento público.
What
No es
Diego has
suficiente
mentioned is
para
key.
cerrar las brechas
Public
nos enfrentamos
financing
a
is
lidiar
not
con el cambio
sufficient to close the
climático.
gaps to deal
Y
with
en
the
esa
climate
línea,
change. And
catapultar o
along that line,
incentivar
we need
la intervención del
to
sector privado es fundamental,
incentivize
¿no?
the
Y lo que tenemos acá
private
entonces, lo que nos trajo
sector.
Mario y
So
algunos de
what
los mensajes que nos
Mario
trae Camila
mentioned with
son
some
precisamente estos.
Camila's
¿Cuáles son
messages
los
as well
mecanismos
would
que
be
tienen los
what are the
gobiernos
mechanisms that
nacionales y
governments
subnacionales
have
para incentivar la inversión
in
privada?
order to
¿No?
incentivize private
Diego nos hablaba
investment.
que uno de los retos
So
principales
they
para
were mentioning
desbloquear o
that some of the
destrabar esta inversión
challenges to
privada precisamente es
unlock
reducir los
this
riesgos a los que nos
private
enfrentamos.
investment would be
Y el
reducing the
ejemplo de
risks that we're
Mario
faced
es
to. And the
claramente un
example from
sistema
Mario, it's
de
is
financiamiento mixto
relevant.
para
We're
reducir el
having
riesgo
a
o
mixed
uno de los riesgos que
financing to
nos
reduce
enfrentamos, ¿no?
one
En
of the
este
risks
caso,
that we
el efecto
could be
cambridge
facing.
cambiario, que es
We
particularmente
have
alto en
a
Brasil. Diego también mencionaba la
exchange
importancia de tener
rate
este
risk
pipeline
that could
listo
be difficult for some countries. And
rodar
Diego
más,
also
invertir
mentioned the
estos proyectos
pipeline,
y Mario
which
hablaba de
means
las
that we need
subastas,
to
¿no? Que
invest in
precisamente
the
están hechas
projects. And
para
Mario
atraer
was talking about auctions.
estos proyectos. Pero Diego también
Auctions
mencionaba, y es
actually help us to
particularmente
attract
relevante en
such
esta ocasión,
projects.
que
And
países
what
como
was mentioned
México o
also
países como
includes
Brasil o tal vez
countries such
incluso
as
Argentina, que
Mexico,
son más
Brazil,
grandes,
even
tienen economías más
Argentina, which are
grandes, tienen la
larger
posibilidad de
in
tener
their
ese pipeline
economies.
y
They
por lo
have the
tanto
possibility of
este
having
tipo
such pipelines.
de incentivos
Therefore,
que ha
these
generado
type
el
of
gobierno
incentives generated by the
son
government
adecuados.
are
Pero lo que tal vez
suitable.
tenemos que considerar es que en
And
realidad hay
we need to consider that
un
actually
portafolio completo
there's
de
a
mecanismos
whole
que puede
portfolio
generar
of
el gobierno
mechanisms that
para
the government
reducir los
could
riesgos o
generate to
transferir los
reduce
riesgos
risks
a
or
otros actores.
transfer
Y
risks
en esa
to
línea, por
other
ejemplo, cada
key
país de la
actors.
región,
In that
dependiendo de sus
line, each country
características,
in the
puede
region,
aplicar
depending on their
diferentes instrumentos,
characteristics,
¿no? Como
can apply
decía
different instruments.
Diego, en el
Like
caso de Brasil, en
Diego
el caso de
mentioned,
Argentina, en
for
el
the
caso de
case of
México, un
Brazil,
sistema
Argentina,
como
and
el que ha
Mexico,
hecho
a system
Brasil
is
es
Brazil
completamente adecuado porque hay
is
ese pipeline
suitable
de
because we have
proyectos
the
y tal
pipeline
vez
of
esto también es
projects,
replicable en otros
and I'm
países
sure that
siempre
this could be
adecuándose a la
replicable
realidad, ¿no?
in
Pero también
countries
el gobierno
according to their
puede,
own
hay otras
reality. I believe
herramientas
that
de
the government
mitigación de riesgos
has
como los sistemas de
risk
garantía,
mitigation
¿no? Donde
tools like
el
the warranty
gobierno o terceros
systems in which the
prometen
government
cubrir las
or the
pérdidas si un
third
proyecto fracasa y esa es
parties
una forma
could
también de
cover
reducir el riesgo
this
de
in
caída
case
de
the project
recaudación.
fails. And this is
Creo
a
que es
way
uno de los
to
principales retos para destrabar la
see
inversión
the
privada.
risks to
También
unlock
podemos
the
desarrollar
investment. And in
sistemas
that
de
sense,
seguros
we're going to be
que se pueden
developing
implementar de
insurance
distintas formas. Vemos, por ejemplo, que
systems
los
that we could
últimos
implement.
mecanismos de
We could
canje
see
de
that the
deuda de los
last
gobiernos también
mechanisms
tienen un
of
sistema de
investment
seguros.
exchange
Pero los
has
seguros
also an
también se
insurance
pueden
system, but
implementar a mucho menor
insurances
escala.
could be implemented
Tenemos también sistemas de
with a
préstamos
lower scale.
concesionarios we have also systems for loans. This is what Mario mentioned in his presentation, and this is a scheme of mixed financing. And in some cases, this would be sort of a loan with better conditions provided by the market. And we have public and private associations towards which we're transferring the risk to private sectors to have investment or to foster investment. So Diego provided us a framework to unlock the private sector. He highlighted that one of the main challenges was reducing such risks. We have had a clear example on how Brazil has identified some of the risk, which is the exchange rate, and has established an incentive mechanism to invest in spite of such risks. So the importance of this, or the relevance, is to identify which is the tool that will help the countries in the region, and that could be more suitable for the type of investment that we're trying to achieve. I believe, Grecia, I went over the 4 minutes, so sorry.
Muchas gracias, Rocío. Creo que en realidad este
Yes,
espacio nos queda
Rocio,
todavía
thank
más
you.
para
I think that
conversación,
we
pero
still
igual
need to
quería
have
agradecerles de
more
nuevo a
hours
Diego, a
of
Mario, también a
conversation, but I
Camila,
would like to
a
thank
Rocío que nos han
Diego,
acompañado
Mario,
el día de
Camila,
hoy. Creo que
Rocio
esto da pie a
being
muchos más temas de
here with us
conversación
today. I think that
y
this opens
queríamos
up
agradecerles nuevamente
more
por ser
lines for
parte de
conversation.
este programa
And
de
I want to
2
thank
años.
you for
Los
being
siguientes
here for
pasos que
this 2-year
tenemos es
program. And
planificación
the
para
next
nuestra
steps
sexta y última sesión,
will
que ya
be
es
our
en
6th
enero del
and final
próximo año.
session, which
Y también
will be
recordarles
held
que tenemos
on
un grupo de
January
WhatsApp
next year.
para
We have a WhatsApp
las
group
personas que
as
estén
well
interesadas
for
en
the
formar
people that
parte
are
del programa
interested in
y
being
así
part of
como
the
un chat para
program.
que también puedan dejarnos todos sus
And
comentarios. Entonces,
also, it will be a good way
muchas
to
gracias
have
por
other
acompañarnos
comments
nuevamente
if
y
you
que tengan
like.
un
So
excelente
thank you
día
for
todos.
joining us and have an
Nos
excellent
vemos
day.
pronto.
Thank you and see you soon.
Chao, chao.